Hello and welcome everybody to this week's episode of Writing Visual Studio Extensions with Mats. That's me. And as always, we have James, the producer, with us. Hello, James. How are you doing?
I'm great. And how are you?
Oh, feeling good. It's weekend, almost. And as usual, this is the last thing both James and I we do before the weekend. So, I feel quite excited by that.
I'm excited because last week we had an awesome stream where I made you do even more work, which was fantastic. And I'm excited to see what you're up to this week. So until then, I'll see everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. So today we're going to take a look at a MEF component. We're going to do an editor extension. Now, what happened was that some years ago, there was this extension out there called Extensibility Tools. And that was an extension that existed for Visual Studio 2015. And it was an extension that was meant for extenders to use, and it gave us a lot of additional features that made it easier to work with extensions. That still exists, but today it's called Extensibility Essentials. And it's very important that if you want to do anything with extensions, you need to download that extension. It's an extension pack that contains a lot of small extensions that each has a piece of the puzzle to make it a great development experience writing Visual Studio extensions. And it started from the old extensibility tools. And I started taking things out of extensibility tools and put them into their own smaller extension. And then put everything in an extension pack for 2019 called Extensibility Essentials 2019. All features but one. And that is the feature that we're going to write an extension for today. So if you follow me here on my screen, I'm going to go to GitHub. I am sharing my screen, right, James? Oh, here it comes. All right. So I'm going to go into the GitHub repo for extensibility tools. Again, this was for Visual Studio 2015. So it's a little bit old. And I'm going to scroll down here through the explanation of all the features until I get to this here thing, editor margin. It tells us information about the current language in the editor, the file that you have open, and something about the classification, the encoding, and the content type. And this is something that's extremely valuable when you are writing language services or other types of editor extensions. And so that's what we're going to build today. You see here how it's located under the zoom control on the scroll bar. That's in the margin. So that's in the editor, that's what's called the margin. And so we're going to build a margin control. And, the really good thing about this is that we already have it from this project, which is on GitHub, right? So I'm just going to copy paste some stuff. And then I looked at the code like an hour ago, and it looks like we need to make it a little better. And then I think it has a missing feature that we need to look at as well if we have time for that. So let's just go to Visual Studio and create a new extension. We are going to just search for V6 and grab a V6 project. What are we going to? First of all, I'm going to put it in my GitHub repo. What are we going to call this? We're going to call this extensibility margin. Yes. Okay. So the first thing we do when we create a new extension is that we open the manifest file. I like to just have a GUID. Actually, this is silly that I always just use a GUID. What I really should do, all it needs to do is have to be unique. So what it kind of had there before was maybe better. I don't know. Anyway, I like to keep it like this, and then I like to start all extensions at like 0.5. And we could say this is preview. Check the box down there, and then we give it a description. What could that be? Shows the encoding, content type. Oh man, I hope that I could just grab some text here, but it's not really that good. So shows relevant information about the current file and language to extensibility authors. I feel like I need to make this a little bit more, to pop a little bit more. So maybe a little boring, but let's just keep that for now. Let's see what we got here. Assets. We got a package. That's fine. But we also need a MEF component. So I'm just going to say this project is also a MEF component. Just like that. And so I didn't think it through when I made everything. Yeah, okay, so the default namespace is has that underscore. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Assembly name has a space in it. Are we okay with that? I think so, right? That's fine. Okay. Let's remove all comments. See what I did there? Control K, Q. Remove all comments that are not structural, such as a region. So that's an extension, by the way, called, if you're wondering, it's an extension I got called comment remover. There it is. And I wrote this extension specifically because the template for writing extensions is full of comments that I want to get rid of. So anyway. Okay, so there's a few things before we get started that is kind of just housekeeping that I'd like to get done. But actually, no, we're fine for now. So now I'm just going to go and grab. So I cloned this extensibility tools. I'm going to grab this folder called editor margin. And just drop that right in here. And I have to go through these files and update the namespace. We'll see. We'll see how hard it is going to be for us to do this. All right. So system Windows controls, that is probably okay. Be quick in the link. What is this? Is this in the comments? Is this presentation core, presentation framework, or Windows base? It's always one of those. Let's try presentation core. But that was one of them. Okay. So let's try presentation framework. Yep, there it was. Oh, and then I need Windows base. Yeah, I always need that one. All right. There we go. So far so good. Let's just build this to see what happens. There's no way this is going to work. Oh, system component model. Why does that not exist? Why does that not exist? Okay. No. Yeah, so I think it's going to add a reference. Bizarre. So we just reference it ourselves. System component model. Composition. Okie dokie. There we go. Yeah, and then it like checks for. I'm going to go through what all this is in a second. Let's just do that now, actually. So maybe what I should do is that I should go to full screen. Shift-Alt-Enter. I always forget about that. Okay. So this right here is our MEF component. So let's talk about what this does. So remember I said that it's going to add something to the glyph margin inside, sorry, not the glyph margin, but just the margin inside the editor. And the editor is a MEF-based component. And so for us to extend the editor, we need to use MEF. And MEF basically is any class that you put this export attribute onto. And then, of course, you have to export something that someone else is importing, right? And it just so happens to be that the editor understands what an IWPF text view margin provider is. So if we export a type of that, then it'll be picked up automatically by the editor. And let's take a look at what this is. So we give it the export to instruct MEF what to do. Then we give it a name, extensibility, tools, margin. That's not what we called it. So that's not what we want to call it. Where is that? Bottom margin. Oh, it's over here. Okay. Extensibility margin was what we called it, wasn't it? So, okay. Anyway. And then we're saying, okay, here comes the tricky part. These two. This determines where our margin control is going to be placed, because there's 4 margins: top, left, right, and bottom. And so first we have to say the order. We have to be before or after some other existing margin that exists here, right here. See? So there's a bunch of them right here. And these are just, they're named. So you can just find their names and use those as a string. But the predefined collection here is kind of nice. So somewhere on the bottom in our case, right? And then we tell it where to be, and then we tell it that it has to go before some or after some other margin. So we can say after equals this, but before equals, and then some other one, right? So I did the hard work back then in 2015 to figure out exactly where it was. And actually, you know, today we have more things in 2019. We now have the document health indicator, like this stuff down here, and code cleanup. So this might no longer be accurate. We'll see. Then we say it's going to work for everything text, which is true, or any. Let's just keep text. I could also say code, then it would be for all code. But in our case, we want to make sure that if you have a plain text document or something like that, it also works. And we should only add it to the margin in things that are debuggable. We have some options here. Editable or primary document is a good one too, or zoomable actually. I think zoomable is the right thing to do. Okay. So we have this class and we implement the interface. And this interface needs something called create margin. Since it's MEF, I can import other types. So I'm importing 2 different types here. And let me just get rid of this. And those 2 types I pass on to this new thing I'm creating, a bottom margin. So this needs a SAML. Okay, system SAML. That's why that's complaining. There we go. So I'm going to return. So whatever this interface does, it just returns something. In this case, it has to return a IWPF text view margin. All right. So see all this stuff. Let's just add the read-only modifier. Yep. Let's make it look nice. And okay, so what happens here? So we knew up a bottom margin. It's also a doc panel. A doc panel is a WPF control. Okay. So not only is our IWPF text view margin something that the editor understands what to do with, it's also a WPF control. So it can render just itself, basically. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're setting things up here. We're getting the classifier. I'm going to get into what a classifier is. Classifier was the thing we got from up here. And then we're going to look at some things. But first and foremost, all it kind of does is that it goes through and creates some new controls and adds them to the children of the doc panel. And then it updates, it calls these different things to update its methods or the text. And see here, this is kind of the old way to do it. This is a really wrong way of delaying execution of code. So we're going to update that. But it still works. It's just kind of a, hey, don't do this. But we do have some, logger. We don't have a logger, so we're going to do the oldest trick in the book. Trace. System dot, what's it called? Diagnostics. Trace. And what does it fail? Something like this. That can't be right because, no, it's a string. We want the whole thing. Okay. Didn't I just do a thing where I could select the whole line? I'm just going to do it here. What was last week? What was the shortcut to select the whole? It was edit, advanced, select whole line. Yeah, you can see I found out how to get in here. So that's cool. Shift Alt D. That's right. So Shift Alt D. Boom. That's kind of neat. Copy. And I have a feeling that, yeah, that's the same thing down here. And there. Okay, so now that's our control. And then finally we have a text control here. And this, okay, so will this work? Let's find out. Hello, Jonas. I just saw the comment there. James, I don't know, were there any other comments that I just didn't see? Yeah, you too, man. Okay, so now we have our experimental instance running. Let's open a file. That file no longer exists, or maybe it does. And look down here. It totally works. What is roles? Oh, wow, Ubi diff. Ubi, I've never seen that. That's new. Okay, so let's take a look at what this actually is. It tells us the encoding, UTF with a bomb. It tells us what the content type is. It's HTML_X projection. That's the technical name that we as extenders are going to use if we're going to interact with this document. Classification. So it's a tag delimiter. So you see where the cursor is right now? If I move that, I'm using my arrow keys here. And if you keep looking down here, tag delimiter. Now it's an HTML element name. Tag delimiter again. Now there's no classification. Now it's an HTML attribute value. And then the selection here, we can see the buffer position. And if I do a selection, we can see how many characters and we can get the full range there. So this is actually super duper helpful, I think. What do you think? For anyone who's tried to write a language or language service or something like that, does this seem helpful? Can you see why this would be an interesting thing to do? Or use, I mean? Or is it like weird? That could be. Okay, so this was the copy and pasting. That was easy. Now let's fix up a few things. So there are a few things that miss. There's no way for me to turn off the margin. I feel like I need to be able to do that. Like toggle it on and off. Maybe put a button up here on the toolbar. Yeah, I think that's what we should do. And will that margin stuff wrap the contents of its overflow the right side? Let's take a look. How will it overflow? Oh man, come on. I think it will go to the next line. No, it just disappears. So it's WPF, right? The doc panel is WPF. So whatever you want to have it do, you can have it do. I think this is the least troublesome thing. But I'd say this is fine. As expected, I would think, here in this case. I don't know about you, but it's just a little bit too much for me with that broad scroll bar there. Okay, or wide. Okay, So a few things to do here. Let's fix up, add read-only modifier. Yeah, sure. Oh, we don't even use this, it looks like. Check here how it sets the resources. It says foreground property, and then it gets the environmental colors. This is such that it will work with the dark theme, the light theme, whatever. So we don't give hex or RGB values. Instead, we use the values that are defined in the system here under environmental colors. Nope, I don't like that. Why wasn't this part of it? It's kind of weird, isn't it? Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, because it shouldn't be. I don't always agree with this this particular rule. All right. Anyway. Yeah, that's not pretty either. Okay. I'm just gonna truck along here. Okay, so let's take a look at what we actually are doing here to make this work. How are we able to get that information that we display in the margin from the editor? So, you know, we did pass a few things in here. We passed in the classifier, and we passed in a document service. And those were the two things that we imported here, these two things, from our provider, MEF component. And so they're going to be used from here, for instance, classification label. Let's go to definition. So what are we doing? Well, first of all, we're going to grab the text buffer. And the text buffer, we're going to get that off of the text view right here. So you can see here how it kind of, it's actually a little bit tricky because a text view, so a text view, we talked about this last week. A text view is what you see in the editor. So if you look at my Visual Studio right now, it's everything here in the editor, including the margins. So it has a bunch of stuff, but it doesn't include the text itself, which is kind of strange to think about. Not directly, at least, because the text is contained within text buffers, and you can have one or more text buffer per text view. Like in HTML, for instance, you can mix HTML with JavaScript in the same file, which is valid to do in HTML and, you know, of course. But that means that we have what's called a projection buffer. We are able to have a parent buffer that has child buffers that are being projected into its parent. So that's why they're called projection buffers. And so in those situations, we have multiple buffers per text view. So that's why it kind of goes in and it sees whether or not there are any projection buffers under the caret. The caret is the cursor. No, it's not the cursor. The caret is, you know what the caret is, right? It's the this thing. But it's important that we get these things right, because if you search for cursor, cursor is the mouse cursor. That's not going to land you anywhere that's interesting from an extensibility point of view from the editor. But the caret, that's that blinking thing on the screen right here. Okay. So that's why we need to get the text buffer under the caret, because it could be, we don't know what it is at this point. So we're just grabbing that. I'm going to hit Control minus. That gets me back to where I was before. And I was in this method before. So now we have the text buffer. We're going to figure out exactly where it is, figure out the position. So that's the buffer position where my caret is. And once we have that, we can create a span. Okay. A snapshot span. And then we can add our classification service here, our classifier, all the classification spans. And then we do a little gymnastics because it returns some weird strings, and we're able to figure out exactly what it is. And what does classification mean? All right. So if we look at this file here, this C# file, you can see some things here are kind of teal. The strings here are sort of red brownish. Then we got the else statement here is purple. The keywords are blue. And that's about it, right? So those are all different classifications. So whoever wrote the language service, in this case, it's the Roslyn C# team, they classified their language into all these different, but basically classifiers. So they would, for instance, say, okay, we know that the language service would know that from this position to this position, I'm just going to select it right here, is a thing of the language called a keyword. Right? And then they have something later on that knows, oh, all keywords should be blue, and then they colorize it. But first, the classifier comes in and classifies everything. Anyway, so that's what we can use the classification service for, is to retrieve that information from the implementation of that language. Okay, that was one of them. Then we need to find the content type. What do we need content types for when we were writing extensions? Well, we used it right here, right? Content type. If you want your editor extension, whatever it could be, to only apply to a certain language, you need to know what that content type of that language is. So therefore, that is an important one. And this one is kind of easy. We just go in, again, we get the text buffer. And the buffer has content type properties on it, and we can get the display names out of that, and then we go from there. And what else? And then we have the selection. Text view selection, start and end. So here we just figure out basically if you have a selection, and then we can give you a start and end position. And you can see here we do that right here. And finally, roles. So again, these are the roles here, right? What is the text view role? So this one, I'm not sure how interesting it is, because I feel like they might always be the same, but I'm not sure. But you can but there's definitely different roles for different files. No, I don't know if there is. So whether or not this is relevant or not, I don't know. But at least it lets us see, so that if someone has their own role, that means that it won't be here in the predefined text view roles. Then you can still be able to figure out what it is. All right. And then I think there's a bunch of helpers down here. What is all this? Visual element, margin size, 0 references. This seems like something that was implemented by an interface that is no longer needed or something. So let me just delete that. And then delete this. Oh, you know. I don't know. Are these part of the doc panel? Like the base class of this? I'm going to just leave them for now. Okay. So, and I'm just going to fix up some things. Okay, so this one. What we're going to do here, so performance is always a problem. So performance when typing is something that we're actually measuring on the Visual Studio team. It's something we take extremely seriously. There can be no typing delays. Imagine you're typing something and it takes like whatever amount of milliseconds for you to notice that there's a delay between you typing and it showing up on the screen. That would be absolutely awful. Or if you hold down a key, so I'm just going to hold down a key now. See, that goes pretty smooth and quick, right? But imagine that was slow. That wouldn't be good either. And so on and so forth. So that's super important. So you can imagine that if every time you move the caret, that means every time you write in the editor, every time you type, that moves your caret along with the text that you type. That we're going to add an overhead to that delay. Basically, we're going to delay the typing a little bit, and depending on how fast we are here, that could be a bad thing. So here we're listening to the caret position change event. See that? And what do we do on caret position change? We update these three. No reason to do the others, but we do these three things. And so that means every keystroke we run these three methods. And that's potentially a really bad idea. Unless there's a way we can delay that until you're kind of done typing, if you will. And so, or idle. So one thing we do here is that we used to be able to call something called dispatcher.beginInvoke. We can still call it. It's a really bad practice, and that's why it's being flagged here. So basically that would tell the dispatcher that before invoking the content of this method or this delegate right here, it should wait till the UI thread is available, till the UI thread is done doing stuff. Every time we type, every time things changes on screen, the UI thread is the one doing that work. So we want to delay that till afterwards. And, that's not necessarily the best way of doing that. So let's do it a different way. And so I'm basically going to do this. We're going to do async task. And task in this case is this is what we have to do always to avoid namespace collisions. Okay, async task, and then we can just await thread helper dot joinable task factory switch to main thread. Boom. So what are we doing now? We're doing pretty much the same thing. Oh, this one wants to be renamed because we're doing it asynchronously. That's okay. So now we're doing the same thing. We're saying switch to the main thread. Okay. All right. So that's cool. Now let's think about this for a second. Every time I type a character, every time the caret moves, I'm going to put a method putting basically this stuff at the end of the call to the whenever the UI thread is available. And actually that happens so fast, but there's a trick we can do here to do it. So I don't care to update this very, very frequently. I want to update it whenever, because from the time I let my hands off the keyboard till I look down at the margin to see what the classification is, that takes, let's just say that it takes 100 milliseconds. That's plenty of time, okay? So I want to make sure that we do this in a sort of in a good way. So here's a trick. I'm going to create a private Boolean, and we're going to call this updating encoding label, like that. And then we can, the first thing I do, if I'm updating encoding label, then just, return. Otherwise, move to the main thread, like here. And then afterwards, we can say, now we're updating the encoding label. Like that. And then at the end, okay, so why is this? Oh, sorry. There we go. So I'm not doing this right. I should do this. And make it look pretty to do this. Okay. So if I'm updating this, just don't do anything. Otherwise, move on. So I think this is the pattern we want to use. So this is kind of the poor man's version of doing it right. So there is something we can do with, what's it called? We can increment somewhere in the threading namespace. There's another way of doing this to debound the call. So we only do the last call. But I think this one will work absolutely just fine. Okay, so now we have to call this. It's an async task, but we're calling it from this. So it's all TryCatched, right? In here, we will TryCatch everything. We don't really care if this fails. So let me show you a trick. File and forget. So I can call file and forget on tasks when I'm in Visual Studio writing an extension. And all this needs is a name, and I just always give it name of, and then bottom margin, name of my class. This is like when we get telemetry and we figure out, hey, what happened? It will just say bottom margin cost something, an issue here. And that's fine. So we're basically filing and forgetting here, okay? If it fails, Okay. This Boolean thing should work fine even with multiple threads. Yes, it totally should. I'm not making it static because there is one of these per file you got open. So we want to make it such that it's only, to this class. That makes sense. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Let's do. Look at this. I can just copy paste all this, and then replace this. So this one is called update content type. Just like that. But you're saying it doesn't exist. That's right. So we're going to create one. And this is an async task. And then at the end of it all, like right here, oops. I'm going to make this false. Is that it? Oh, and then rename it to async. Yeah, this is going pretty well, I'd say. Oops. Got a little prettier. Then we do it down here. I think this is the last one. Complaining. It's your async task. That was better. And this one is called updating classification. And let's introduce that. Put that here. And that's a long one. There we go. And it needs async. So this time we're gonna, I think the reason that when I paste this that it's unformatted, it didn't keep the line breaks, is because it doesn't know about the await keyword. If it fails, it never runs again. But it can't fail. I'll show you. Async task. Yeah, that was the reason. It never fails because it's a TryCatch, right? So it will always come down and execute the last line here. Rename, nope. Generate. Use a finally. Yes, I could, but I don't have to. Why don't I have to? Because if anything in here fails, it goes to catch. And I'm not returning here, so it will just continue on here. This way I will save. You see some lines of code here. Two lines and some more. Yeah. So that's my thinking around that. I totally could. There's nothing wrong with it. It's probably actually the right way of doing it. But, okay. This must be the last one. Async task. Wouldn't it be fun if this just completely fails? I'm spending all the time doing it. Getting roles. All right. Okay. And I have a feeling I renamed something. Was that 5 times I did, or 4? Oh, okay. So now we're going to file and forget. And where did we do that? Here we go. File and forget. Okay, so this may work. And then it disposes, it does some things. Okay. Let's just, this time I'm going to attach the debugger. Don't forget to change the names of what? Ah, yes. My rename was greedy, or I was mistaken here. Yes, I only have 4. I missed one. Encoding, classification, content type, and encoding, content type, content selection. Content type is the one that I did wrong. Okay. Classification, rename back in time. Encoding is still encoding. Okay, classification and classification, these match. Update content selection and content selection, that matches. Updating roles and roles. Okay. I think we got it. Thank you for seeing that. Yes, we need a VS extension to track how many times we rename our identifiers. And that's another classification right there, identifier. That's a name of a classification, one of the predefined ones. Writing component cache. Again, this is the meth cache. It figured out that we changed something and it's going to do that for us. Okay, so good news. It still worked to begin with, but does it work as I type? It works as I click around with the mouse. So if I go do this and then immediately do this, HTML tag delimiter. Still says HTML tag delimiter. Why does it say that? Now it says none. I'm gonna open it. Close it. HTML tag delimiter. So does this not execute as I'm typing? Caret position change. No, it doesn't. Oh, okay. So now it works. Hang on a minute. So it needs me to use the arrow keys of the mouse to move it. So, okay, so it doesn't work when I type. Okay. Anyway, it works, right? So it's great. So that means I probably didn't have to do all that stuff, but I still needed to move it out. Yeah, okay. So probably what I didn't have to do was I didn't need to keep track of it being, I mean, I did the right thing. But I might not have needed to do this. I just maybe needed to switch to the UI thread. Well, okay. Are people cool with stuff like this? When I, is this like is this crazy to do it in one line? Because they're kind of related and used for the same kind of thing? Or is this crazy? I think it's kind of nice. Get that out of the way. Okay. So I just want to make sure that I can delete this stuff down here because that was kind of noisy. All these here weird things that does nothing. Okay. Okay. So oh no, it needed something. Did it really need all those? So that is what it was. Okay. Okay, well that's annoying. So we need them. Did I put them back? There they go. Okay. Oh well, oh well. So far so good. We're off to a really good start here with our extension. There's a few things we need to do. So there's a housekeeping thing. No, we need to add a command. We need to add a command. So add new item, extensibility command. Because I want this so that I can toggle the margin on and off. So what are we going to call this? We're going to call this margin toggle command. Yep, margin toggle command. Okay. It's going to give us a PNG file. We don't want that. It's going to give us a vsct file. Again, Control KQ to remove all those. Then let's just import or include our known monikers. What else do we have? So the bitmaps, that was that PNG I didn't want. So let's just get rid of those. There we go. Here, package, GUID package. And we'll put that up here. Just rename that to be shorter and nicer. So now we can go into our package class and clean that up a little bit. Oh, I need to. Oh, it's already. Yeah, let's rename this to VS command table. There we go. Okay. So now I can come in here and say, notice how that this package string that's in here, 1825, it starts with 1825. That's also the one that is used up here in that the item template did. So there's no reason to have the source of truth twice. So I'm just gonna go in here and say package GUID package string. So that now here. So see my vsct file is automatically created a CS file behind it with all this information. And that's because I have the extensibility essentials installed. I can right click and say synchronize to code file, and that will create one of these. Or if I have the extension installed as when I add the command, it will automatically add it for me. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so I like it. Now let's look at the margin control here. Same thing, Control KQ. Let's clean it up. And what is it? Shift Alt Enter. That's full screen. No. Oh, it is. There we go. Oh, I was full screen. Okay. So let's see here. My package class now initializes my margin toggle command. Let's go to definition, F12. So it goes in here where it creates, and I really don't like this. Really don't like this at all. So we need to find the GUID and the ID, and we already did that right out here. Here's my GUID, and here's my ID. So package GUID, oops. That's that one. And command ISO package IDs, and that was the margin toggle command ID. So maybe let's figure out how we're gonna toggle on and off. Is that what we want to do? Yeah, we just want to toggle. So if it's on, we do one thing. If it's off, we do another thing. So for that, I need settings. So let's just go grab some settings from. Did we do something last time? Twixtor? No. I got some good ones somewhere, but where did I put them? What have I done recently? Could this one be? Yep, perfect. So I'm just going to take this, clone this. And then we're just going to go grab the options, drop them in here. And then we're just going to, what was its extensibility margin right here? Let's just go ahead and update all these. And we don't need all of this, but let's, we just need to store a setting somewhere. Okay, so what I want to do with the toggle is I want to change the setting. And so the base things here, we don't need to change the base models. They all come from the Visual Studio SDK. So all I have to do is my general options here. Let's just call it that. I need a Boolean saying is it visible or not, or enabled or not, right? And by default it is. And it says specifies whether the margin is visible or not. Default true. Okay, so now we have a setting. Is there any ways of plans to sort? No, there's no way to, or plans to sort all this stuff. I'm with you. It's kind of weird. It seems a little bit like just put in there randomly. But yeah, I haven't heard of any plans. We have a dialog page provider like this. Okay, so let's just see what the base object model does really quick. The base object model talks to the underlying settings store, get read-only settings. So now we can talk to settings in a way that doesn't require the UI thread, okay? So let's just close all this. So what our command is going to do here, when we click our command, we're going to read the settings. So general options dot instance dot enabled. So what we're going to say is when the button is clicked, we have a menu command. We're going to do bar. Let's just call it button. That's easier. Button equals sender is the button. So when it is clicked, we're going to toggle this margin. So we're going to say enables equals what it was, the opposite of what it was before. Something as simple as this. So we don't even need the button here. Okay, so now we just toggle the content of the setting itself. So let's actually go to the settings because we need a way for our margin control to hide itself if it's being changed. So let's create an event. So I'm in the base option model here, and I'm just going to do public. And am I going to do static? Yes, public static event. What's the event handler? It's the standard event handler, I guess. And then we called it saved. Okay, so let's call this. Actually, no, it's a T. Yeah. Because if we look at the signature of this method, we can see here it has a T. So now when we're saving, your save async is the, so when it's all done, all that stuff, then we can say saved, and then invoke it. If anyone is listening, this, oh, not this, live model. There we're getting a new, so it saves everything and then it reloads the instance back in to memory. So now we have an event on our options that they were changed. So I should be able to, from my bottom margin, go in here and say general options. Is that right? Saved. And do something like this. On options saved. And go this visibility equals then general options instance enable. If it's like that, we need to make visibility visible. Otherwise, it collapsed, I think it is. If it's okay, everybody. So we now have our button that we created, which is right here, which wouldn't work. I can't compile this. It's going to complain that it can't find these GUID images. See here? So I'm going to say GUID catalog, image catalog GUID, and then we're going to give it another name. Let's give it, or another icon. Let's give it an icon that's nice. So known monikers Explorer, and the icon for editor margin is what? Is there something called margin? Okay, some ideas. What should I search for? What would be like good concept? It's like information about the. Oh, it's like a pencil, right? It's like edit because it's like in the editor. So it's like would it be one of these here, something like that, or document editor, edit manifest. Here, edit zone. Let's do that. So I'm just right clicking and say copy name to clipboard. Putting that in here. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it toggle extensibility margin. And we're going to always give it a canonical name of something that starts with a dot. So extensibility. Oh, let's just do the same thing. But it can't have spaces, so we're just going to remove the spaces. But I would say it's view. View this. Okay, and we put it on the My Menu group, which is under Tools. That means that by default, it will show up here. But I think I want it on the toolbar. How do we do that? It's a menu button. The button. So the parent is the standard toolbar. This tools. There's no way this is going to work, right? I know. I could find. I very recently put another. Oh, Farticus. Farticus does this. I could check out that extension. Yeah, that didn't work. I don't see that button up here. So we need to put it. So let's go here. Where do I do it? I do it in. It's just solution extensions or something. Yeah, I think this is. So let's just find out here. Now, what's this about? This is already defined. Why am I defining that here? Oh, yeah. I'm just kidding. So this one, okay. So down here, I still have to make this my GUID extensibility. This is way too long, and then my menu group, like this. Okay, so it's because this is all buttons has to go into groups, And groups is something we can place on various things. But sometimes we can take the button and parent it into a group that already exists in Visual Studio. And I thought that that's what I did. But I didn't. I basically took my parent and tried to make it, I took my button and tried to make it into and say that the parent was a menu. Toolbars are also menus. And you can't put a button in a menu. A button has to go into a group. So now we're in business here. Okay. Let's just see if it works. See, the icon didn't pick up. We need to figure that out. So now if I click, we see here that absolutely nothing happens. So we're going to debug that. But what was the problem with that toolbar? Oh, icon is moniker. I forgot. So whenever we use our, whenever we use something like this, right? They call image monikers. We actually have to put this command flag in there. And let's just make sure that there's nothing else. No, that's it. Okay, and then the toggle command. Why did that not execute? Oh, I need to say on my package, I need to register my options. So provide profile. And this is type of, what did I call them? General options or dialog page provider.general. There we go. And string category name. Should we give it? Category. Let's just right click our v6 manifest and say synchronize to code file. So now we have that in C# here as well. I can say v6 dot name string object name. Oh man, I forget so quickly how to do this. That's why it's so important that you know what to search for. So let's just look at this here. Yeah, let's just do this. What is this? Shift-Alt-E. Yeah, copy that whole thing. Copy profile. Okay, so all that, we just leave it at that. This time I want to attach the debugger because why did nothing happen when I executed my command? Did it not execute? Let's break there. Let's make sure that it initializes. And what else? And then I need to make sure that we also in our editor margin that we actually, it reacts to when the general options are saved. Okay, so we load. See, here's the icon. Hey. Any questions while this is loading? Generate what image async? What image? Oh, SVG. This is a completely different extension. Yeah. Okay. So now we click here. So, okay. So let's just see what happened. So I opened the only thing I've done so far is open a file. Now this file, make sure that MEF will be loaded. When the editor loads, it loads MEF, and that's why we see it down here. But our package has not loaded. And it won't load until I click the button. So now I click the button. Okay, so you see now Initialize Async runs. And I'm just going to hit F5. And it comes in here, and we see here. Is this enabled? Oh, I can't see. Why can't I see? Gonna go out of full screen mode here. There's something about because I'm crossing over into like from, between threads or something like that. Not command window. Media. Here we go. Okay. Okay. But nothing happened on my, where do we go? Bottom margin. This one didn't trigger. I just changed it. Didn't it save? Did this not? Oh dear. Obvious, if you know what I'm doing. I forgot that in my command, I need to, of course, call general options.instance.save. Haha. This time I'm not even going to test the debugger because now it just works. Maybe. Okay, open file. And I should work on visibility. This shouldn't be enabled when there's no document open, right? So, no, it's fine. It could do it. Look at that. It works. Can you believe it? This was almost like one of those things where it worked on the third try, which is like pretty good for extensions, I'd say. So we have a winner. I could continue on with this, but let's just not do that for now. Let me just throw it out there on the GitHubs such that you have something to play with. And I'm just going to go grab some files here. I'm going to grab all of these and I'm going to put them extensibility margin. I'm going to put those here. I should have done this in the beginning. Anyway, now we have all that. I'm now going to do what? I'm going to add existing item to my solution items. And that was the appver file. So this is how I'm going to set up. Yeah, that's all good. My build mechanism. Oh, we forgot a few things. So resources. We definitely want to add an existing item. And that's this license file that we have right here. And we want to add that as a link right there. And I want this in my, so this content is should include in v6 true. And let's find, should we just do the same link? Yeah, let's just do the same link. 90 pixels, export that into resources. And let's just call it icon. So include that in project. That's content in v6 true. We then go to v6 manifest and our license resources. That icon like this. And what's our more info URL? That's HTTPS. That's going to be github.com/Christensen/extensibility margin. Okay. All right. We ready to publish? Local path. Yep. Oh. Okie dokie. Oh, yeah. Time to get the old authenticator app up. Let's see if that works. Sweet. Bloody margin. Here we go. It's not private. Create and push. Yep. Save it all. All right. So let's see here. Is it up? Is it up? Is it up? Boom. Extensibility margin. Here it is. That was a 1 hour extension. Of course, we cheated and took code that already existed. So that, of course, made everything so much easier. But I hope that helped you understand how we can manipulate the margins around the editor of Visual Studio. And again, it's just WPF. That's the most brilliant thing about the editor, is that everything is WPF. And so you can do whatever you want. Any types of controls in there. If you remember the Markdown editor, oh, I need to do one thing actually, because if I look at my README file, then you can see, first of all, that I forgot to update it. But you see this split screen right here? This is actually a margin control. I host a browser in here, so this is a margin control. So you can do really a lot of things with margins. Okay. So kind of what I always do, and what we call it extensibility margin. This one doesn't exist yet, but it will. And let's get the here. This one doesn't exist yet, but it will. This badge doesn't exist yet, but it will. Updates. We also just do like commit messages like that. I think like for shit like this, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Small things. Okay. Cool. James, do we have any last questions? This was an action-packed episode, I'd say. Let's see here. Just looking through the comments. Is this how the SAML editor works? Oh, you mean so the design surface of the SAML editor or the WinForms or the WebForms editors? No, those are completely different implementations. There's a specific implementation for designers, and that is a whole different ballpark. Has nothing to do with this. It's an old concept, very old concept. Got anything good lined up for post-work beer? The question is. I'm going to paint my garage. I already painted the wall behind me here, but I need to paint in the loft upstairs and some other walls. So that's it. No beer for me before done painting. I think I lost James here. Let's see if there's anything else. Use dark mode. No. Okay, that was it. James, are you with me? You need to stop the stream at some point. I can do it myself.
Hey, yeah, I just have some people over, so I'm away. I've been away. I've been monitoring. Do you need something from me?
I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Okay, cool.
I answered all the questions, I think.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye.
Bye.